A man strips down and demands a woman do the same. Her terrified scream pierces the air, but the assassin silences her without causing harm. Outside, the henchmen's suspicions grow. When they burst through the door, a gruesome sight awaits, their boss lying headless on the floor. Ariel grabs the trembling woman, demanding answers. She points toward a mysterious samurai armor in the corner. The henchmen open fire, but the armor stands empty. In a flash, the assassin materializes behind them. Armed with just a short blade, they make quick work of the trained killers. Wave after wave of henchmen pour in, but none can match the assassin's deadly skill. Ariel feels death's cold breath on his neck as his men fall. Standing alone, he draws his weapon with surprising prowess, managing to hold his own. Seizing a chance, he whips out his handgun, forcing the assassin to dodge and weave. In a moment of triumph, Ariel's relentless gunfire brings down his opponent. As the third wave of reinforcements arrives, he warns them to stay sharp, suspecting multiple assassins. But nothing prepares him for what lies beneath the mask. A young girl's face stares back at them. Darkness engulfs the room, leaving only emergency lights flickering outside. A henchman's lighter reveals a second assassin, who strikes with lethal precision. This one's different. She wields firearms with devastating effect, even hurling grenades with casual disregard for life. A fierce duel erupts between Ariel and this new threat, but his earlier confidence crumbles. She outmatches him completely, landing multiple stab wounds before kicking him from the room. Despite his pleas for mercy, the assassin shows none, ending his life with a single, decisive strike. The assassin, Umbra, returns to find her young companion, the girl known as the 13, saved by a bulletproof vest. When the 13 awakens to a corpse's lifeless stare, Umbra shields her from the grim sight. Both belong to the Shadow of Death organization. After completing their mission, Umbra and the 13 make their escape. As the 13's mentor and instructor, Umbra can't help but question her young pupil's abilities. She warns that sympathy has no place in their world, it only leads to suffering. But the 13 struggles with this harsh reality, even rejecting her codename. When she tries to remember her real name, searing pain floods her mind. Umbra sends her to Jakarta, Indonesia, for psychological reconditioning. The 13's life becomes a monotonous cycle, nightmare-filled nights, mysterious organizational medications, and endless training. Each day, she sneaks away to make secret phone calls. Though they always end in silence, Umbra hasn't assigned any new missions. One evening, the 13 encounters a touching scene, a young boy helping his intoxicated mother up the stairs in their diagonal apartment. The image haunts her. Later that night, commotion erupts. Debt collectors have invaded the mother's home. Following protocol, the 13 stays away. But the next morning, she discovers the woman's lifeless body. A peculiar officer appears to console the son, but something's off about him. When he notices the 13 watching, he vanishes into thin air. 2 weeks pass without word from Umbra. While the 13 stares listlessly at her meatball soup, young Manji approaches, hungry. She shares her meal, and slowly, the truth emerges. Though Manji initially claims his mother died from a drug overdose, his bruised face tells a different story. The 13 spots him eyeing a knife, revenge clearly on his mind. Finally, he breaks down. His mother was murdered. Together, they visit his mother's grave. The 13 encourages Manji to speak freely to his mother's spirit, assuring him she's listening. On their way home, Manji rests against her shoulder, finding a moment of peace in their cruel world. Later, the 13 receives a heartfelt drawing from him, but happiness turns to horror when she finds his apartment door wide open, the boy nowhere in sight. A low-level thug bursts in, under orders from someone named Haga to destroy evidence. High on drugs himself, he carelessly retrieves hidden narcotics from the toilet. The 13 easily overpowers him, demanding Manji's location. The thug Jeki warns her against pursuing Haga, a powerful pimp backed by the mayor's son, Ariel, and Officer Paula. Anyone who crosses them vanishes without a trace. In the heart of the city's largest nightclub, a deadly game begins. The 13 infiltrates under the guise of a job seeker, but Solia, the club's co-owner, senses something off about this unusually strong girl. Meanwhile, Jeki seizes his chance to report about Manji to Haga, Solia's twin. The 13's blood boils as she discovers surveillance footage of Manji's capture. In a flash, she erupts into action, sending a guard flying before confronting the twins. Her fist finds Solia's jaw with devastating precision. When Haga lunges at her with a syringe, she deflects his attacks with lethal grace. The sight of Manji's knife on the table confirms her worst fears. The scene explodes into chaos. As the 13 slashes at Haga, Solia raises a gun. In a split-second decision, the 13 uses Haga as a human shield, a choice that ends with him taking his sister's bullet. Driven mad with grief, Solia unleashes a wild barrage of shots. The 13 seizes her chance, burying her blade in Solia's shoulder. Their brutal dance continues into the crowded nightclub below. Panicked patrons scatter as the 13 13 dodges attacks from all sides, dispatching a henchman by impaling him on a spike and using his body as a grotesque shield. With her knife shattered and police sirens wailing outside, the 13 makes her escape through the back door with Jackie's help. But victory tastes bitter. Jackie, now marked as an accomplice to Hage's murder, abandons the 13 by the roadside. Her parting warning to him, stay away from home tonight, carries the weight of experience. Across town, Officer Paula's interrogation of a drug mule is interrupted by news of his friend Hage's murder. His brother Ariel's world begins to crumble. Their careful plans with Cabby now hang by a thread, all because of this mysterious professional killer. The same girl Paula had spotted at Manji's door. Behind it all looms the mayor, Ariel's father, a man whose perversion is matched only by his political cunning. Even as scandal threatens, he prepares backup campaign photos, ready to discard his own son if necessary. His previous order to handle a pregnant woman had spiraled into murder during election season, and now Manji's imprisonment has brought an unforeseen angel of vengeance to their door. In his fury and fear, Ariel turns his rage on his helpless prisoner, young Manji, whose only crime was being loved by the wrong assassin. Deep in the Cambodian forest, Umbra executes her cleanup mission with signature ruthlessness. Her solitude is broken by the appearance of Troika, an unexpected ally. The forest, her superiors reveal, crawls with traitors from the Shadow of Death organization. As they split up to hunt their prey, Umbra corners a target in a cabin. The ensuing battle reaches fever pitch until her opponent's mask falls away, revealing a face that stops Umbra cold. Wolfer, her former student. The betrayal stings, but what follows shakes Umbra's world even more. Wolfer, against all odds, is pregnant. A miracle considering the Shadow's sterilization protocol for female assassins. For the first time, Umbra's iron resolve wavers. But before she can process this moral crisis, Wolfer makes a fatal mistake, opening the door only to find Troika waiting. The trap springs shut. Meanwhile, the 13's days without medication have left her mind sharp but unstable. She accesses a secret weapons cache hidden beneath a phone booth, preparing for war. Across town, Jackie returns home, despite the 13's warning, unable to abandon his grandmother. His tender moment singing lullabies is shattered when Paula and his corrupt cops surround the house. The night erupts in violence. As Paula's men remove their badges, erasing all official traces of what's to come, the 13 launches her assault. A deadly dance of bullets and shadows begins. She uses the darkness to her advantage, leaving decoy corpses that draw her enemies into fatal traps. Her motorcycle crashes through the house like a battering ram, adding to the chaos. The kitchen becomes a brutal arena. The 13 faces off against a skilled opponent, their struggle bringing them dangerously close to bubbling oil. Every household item becomes a potential weapon. Frying pans deflect bullets, kitchen knives find new purposes. Even as she's nearly scalded, the 13 turns the tables, using hot oil to devastating effect. But even her skill has limits. As Paula's reinforcements arrive and a powerful blow sends her reeling, the 13 realizes this fight is far from over. The night explodes into chaos as the 13 confronts Paula, their deadly dance ending with her dodging his bullets like a phantom. Just as she's about to extract Manji's location, Jackie tackles her, a betrayal born of desperation. Unwilling to harm him, she pursues Paula on her motorcycle. But fate has other plans. A car materializes from the darkness, sending her flying through the air. Ariel, emerging like a demon, strikes again, but his fatal mistake is hesitation, calling Daddy for instructions while Paula taunts their captive. In a savage burst of fury, the 13 transforms into a wild animal, ripping off Paula's ear and crushing his skull until his eye socket caves. When they pull her away, Paula lies dead, the second of 3 brothers to fall. Across the city, Umbra faces her own crisis. Her mercy toward her former student comes with a price. Old Fu presents her with damning evidence of the 13's unauthorized rampage. The master must now hunt her student. The 13 awakens in Ariel's basement prison, her nightmares of a woman's face still fresh in her mind. Above, Ariel rages about the woman who dared to demand marriage, flaunting her pregnancy while his father campaigns for governor. But when the mayor himself appears, Ariel's fury crumbles into submission. The old man sees opportunity where his son sees vengeance. The 13's deadly skills could protect tomorrow's deal, with Manji as the perfect leverage. Though the nightclub lies in ruins and KB's deal hangs by a thread, the mayor simply changes venues, his campaign's appetite for dirty money unchanged. Hope briefly flickers when Manji and Jackie are brought to her cell, but it dies at the sight of the boy's beaten face. The 13 caresses him gently, promising escape, her words carrying the weight of a sacred vow. The final act unfolds at a factory. The 13 plays her part in the devil's bargain, 1 bag of drugs for 2 of cash, with Cabby's death as the bloody finale. But fate has one last cruel twist. As the money changes hands, Jackie witnesses the unthinkable, Manji's lifeless body. His desperate attempt to warn the 13 ends in a honked horn and a shouted truth that shatters her world. The 13's reality dissolves into a blur of grief and rage as Manji's name tears from her throat, a primal scream of loss that promises vengeance. Chaos erupts as Jeki's car becomes a battering ram, smashing into Cabby's camp. The night air fills with gunfire as Cabby, realizing he's been double-crossed, orders a massacre. Ariel rushes to save his father, but Jeki's calculated move with the car door seals the mayor's fate. Playing dead at the wheel, Jeki watches as Ariel transforms into a demon of vengeance, his explosive rounds turning men into living torches. The 13's world narrows to a single point when she finds Manji's lifeless body. As Cabby attempts escape, Ariel appears like a wraith on his windshield, ending him with a single shot. The battlefield becomes a deadly triangle between Ariel, the 13, and Jeki, who struggles with Manji's body. A dance of death begins. The 13's car becomes a weapon, knocking away threats and creating smokescreens for her counterattacks. She and Ariel trade shots through the chaos, neither willing to back down. Her surprise attack nearly ends him, but Ariel's survival instincts save him from the explosive round that lights up the night. Their final confrontation ignites like wildfire. As bullets run dry, they resort to primal combat. Ariel's bat meets the 13's fury, but she turns his weapon against him, smashing his head before introducing him to his burning car. Even then he rises, fiercer than before. The 13 improvises, using shattered glass to slice his thigh before delivering the killing blow that completes her revenge against the three brothers. Victory tastes bitter and brief. As Jeki and the 13 flee, fate deals one final cruel hand. Their car flips, and the 13 wakes to find herself in the organization's clutches. Old Fu's rage manifests in brutal blows as Umbra, her former mentor, stands ready to execute her. The 13's heart dies seeing betrayal in her teacher's eyes. In a last burst of loyalty, Jeki launches himself at Umbra, a futile gesture ending in Old Fu's bullet. As the gun swings back toward her, the 13 makes a desperate choice, hurling herself through the window into uncertainty. In the shadows of an abandoned factory, Predator becomes prey. Troika stalks the 13, his arrogance blinding him to the danger. His bullets kiss the pillar where he thinks she's hiding, but the 13 has already slipped her bonds. Though she's outmatched in raw strength against the adult assassin, her desperation breeds innovation. The fight turns savage. Every blow Troika lands echoes through her smaller frame, but the 13 waits for her moment. When it comes, she strikes like a viper. A screwdriver becomes a deadly weapon, piercing his thigh, then his wrist. His body becomes a grotesque pincushion before she opens his throat in a final, decisive slash. But there's no time to breathe. Umbra, her master, her nightmare, appears like a wraith. The 13 plays a desperate gambit, trapping Umbra with a metal cabinet as a nail bomb fills the air with deadly shrapnel. When cornered again, she feigns surrender. A student's final trick against her teacher. A flash of blinding light creates her opening. Their battle becomes a deadly dance of master and apprentice. Every move the 13 makes is a reflection of Umbra's teaching, each strategy anticipated before it begins. When the gun runs dry, they descend into pure combat. The 13 manages to disarm her master, attempts a crucifix lock, but Umbra is too strong, too skilled. The katana's whisper through the air speaks of death as Umbra attacks without restraint. The 13 dodges by millimeters, her survival hanging by threads. In a move of desperate brilliance, she attempts to catch the blade barehanded, a technique that earns her nothing but a brutal kick. Armed with 2 iron rods, the 13 charges forward. Master and disciple abandon all pretense of mercy, their strikes carrying the weight of betrayal and survival. For one brief moment, Umbra's perfect facade cracks, enough for the 13 to land a face strike and drive a blade into her shoulder. But awakening the Master's fury proves catastrophic. Umbra's knife work becomes a blur of lethal intent. In mere seconds, the 13 finds herself pinned, the student once again at the mercy of her teacher. The deadly dance reaches its crescendo as Umbra tries to impale the 13 on a broken blade, but her student's desperate struggle leads to a shocking reversal. The blade finds Umbra's flesh instead, followed by the savage severing of her hand. Through the blood and pain, Umbra's question hangs in the air. Why has it come to this? In the midst of drawing her dagger, Umbra fails to notice the 13's sleight of hand, a pulled nail bomb pin that transforms the air into a storm of deadly projectiles. Using her master as a shield, the 13 demands answers. Umbra's cold response: this is how the world operates. Old Fu's threatening command breaks the spell, but Umbra makes her choice, hurling the broken blade at him instead of her student. His bullet finds her in return, but the 13's swift shot ensures Old Fu's final silence. As life ebbs from Umbra, she refuses salvation, instead sharing a devastating truth. Years ago, she had killed the 13's mother, but the child's cries for mama had cracked her hardened heart. In her final moments, she returns something precious: a name. Young Nomi, she whispers, dying with a peaceful smile in her former student's arms. Young Nomi's grief manifests in cleansing fire. The next day, as she lays Wee to rest beside her mother, death comes calling again. The shadow cleanup crew, led by the ambitious 14, surrounds her. But fate has one more surprise. Bryce, Umbra's own master, emerges like a guardian angel. When 14's madness leads her to kill her own comrade, a tense standoff ends in retreat. Facing young Nomi, Bryce asks the crucial question about Umbra's death. Her honest admission meets not vengeance, but understanding. He offers more than protection. He offers purpose, knowing that solitude would only lead to her death. In that moment of choice, young Nomi reaches out, taking his hand and with it, a new path forward.